Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to four little poems that will sit at the end of the cluster Songs of Parting. That is to say, Joy, Shipmate, Joy, The Untold, Want, Portals, and finally, These Carols. Poems number 12, 13, 14, and 15 of the 17 of Songs of Parting. We're only talking about 13 lines of poetry, and yet here, compellingly, Whitman's Thanatopsis, that is to say, his meditation on death. Now, you could make the argument that every great poem of Leaves of Grass, starting from Paumanok and Song of Myself, and of course any number of other great poems, Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloom, Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking, all somehow seem to come back to Whitman's musings on death and dying. And we've commented at length about this, and the idea that of our big five, that is to say epistemology, what can you know, ontology, who you are, psychology, study of the individual mind, sociology, the study of the collective mind, it's that fifth, the theodicy question: why must there be pain and suffering? And of course, ultimately, why must there be death? Now, here in these four poems, we're going to see Whitman's attempt to try to present remarkably his Thanatopsis. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, and you've been with us from the very first introductory word, come, the invitation word, up through those inscription poems, and then, of course, a set of introductory comments to Songs of Parting. We just finished with Draw to a Close, and we will now take a few minutes to look at what Norton's has to say about these four poems. All four of these poems, by the way, were first published in the 1871 Passage to India, though not in this order, in the group now Finale to the Shore, with present titles and texts. Of the first poem, Joy, Norton's will tell us, the reader may observe that this poem and the following three, concluding this cluster, emphasize a persistent motivation of the Songs of Parting, that is to say, dealing with death, in other words, Thanatopsis. Obviously a theme that's dominant in the beginning, in As the Time Draws Nigh, obviously Ashes of Soldiers, and of course the brilliant Song at Sunset. No question, when we work with these four poems, we'll come back to Song at Sunset. And then of course afterwards we will have, it's as if it's tying it all together here at the end with now Finale to the Shores, and then of course So Long, the last poem of this cluster. The first of these four poems, Joy, Shipmate, Joy. By the way, Shipmate gets used only one time, amazingly, in Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. Of course, with Joy, we've seen this. I mean, go back to As They Draw to a Close in his use of the word joy. But the Mystic Trumpeter, number 8, comes to mind. Joy, joy, all over joy, you'll remember in that classic rendering. Joy, Shipmate, joy. Pleased to my soul at death, I cry, in parenthetics, notice. Our life is closed. I was commenting as they draw to a close that Whitman loves to use the word close as in proximity, and then of course finality as in passage, as in to close, to finish, right? Pleased to my soul at death I cry. Our life is closed, our life begins. Of course, we'll think about our Emily Dickinson, My Life Closed Twice Before It's Closed. We will finish this set of comments with Bryant's classic Thanatopsis. But I want to go to T.S. Eliot's East Coker, in my end is my beginning, and successes, houses, rise and fall, crumble, extinguish, exposed, blah, 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 blah. Our life is closed, our life begins. The long, notice how he stacks the word, the long, long anchorage we leave. You'll remember anchorage from Song of Joys, and I love the fact that he uses the word leave, and the way he uses it in a collection of poems called, what? Leaves of Grass, right? The ship is clear at last, she leaps. Notice the ship that was coming into harbor in O Captain, My Captain, but now it's the ship that will be leaving, and again, there's just so many moments in Passage to India, obviously, that come to mind of this same thing. She swiftly courses from the shore, joy, shipmate, joy. In other words, as one is preparing to leave the park. As we've said, I mean, they taught us this, guys, at a very young age, didn't they? I don't want to go to the van. I want to stay swinging at the park. No, honey, you can't swing forever at the park. You got to go to the van. That's the rules of the game. From the very youngest of ages, we were being taught, The van has always been waiting. Oh no, it's coming. You haven't met any 200-year-old people. So to that degree, you only get to swing at the park for a little bit of time. And yet, when it comes time to go to the van, joy, joy, shipmate, joy. The next poem in the four cluster, The Untold Want. You'll remember Untold from Shut Not Your Doors. The untold want by life and land ne'er granted. Now, Voyager. You'll remember the use of Voyager in captain ships at sea. Now, Voyager, sail thou forth to seek and find. Now, of course, this takes us back to the Matthew 7 passage, he that seeks will find. This idea, by the way, seek and find is only used one time in all Leaves of Grass, and it's right here in this poem, this brief little two-line poem. Notice the point that he's making. There is something deep within us. Now we go back to Plato's Phaedo, don't we? We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. There's something deep within us that longs to know what happens after death. Now, there's a lot of scholarship about what Whitman believed regarding immortality of the soul. But it's pretty clear from poems like this that Whitman believes something exciting, a voyager, is about to happen here with the untold want. There is a longing. There is a need to know what happens next. To that degree, as Whitman finishes this time of swinging at the park, he's clearly excited about what the ride in the van will be like. Portals, the third of this cluster, will take us back just 7 poems ago to the tribute to his mama as At Thy Portals, right? What are those of the known but to ascend and enter the unknown? Notice capitalized unknown. Now we're to Ardante, obviously, right? The idea of ascending and afterlife. And what are those of life but for death? Now it's literally here that we will find Whitman's theodicy. Why must there be terrible things that happen? Like Beowulf's dragon, right? As we've commented in earlier poems, treatments, and given full lectures at learnstrong.net on Beowulf. That is to say, why must there be this thing called dying and death? Well, it's all part of what the great known is the unknown. That is to say, there's got to be something. No longer ask, why is this happening to me, but rather for me, for death. Notice capitalized. Finally, these carols, of course, carols, a very familiar word, 11 times used in Leaves of Grass. These carols, sung to cheer my passage. You'll remember cheer from Song of Myself 33, be of good cheer, right? Cheer my passage, think of Passage to India. Through the world I see, for completion I dedicate to the invisible world. Notice capital I, capital W. In other words, everything about this experience is in preparation for whatever it is that's coming next. And Whitman doesn't want that to be, for us, fearful, but rather joy-filled. It's an amazing insight as we pick up these 4 little poems. Collectively, what is being argued? Well, I think he's arguing that all of life is somehow a preparation for our own death, and of course the deaths of those we love. There's no question that for many of us, we're going to lose people we care about, and we're going to stand next to that hole in the ground, and we're going to have to say goodbye to them long before we ourselves go. That happened obviously to Whitman with his mommy. And to that degree, how do we stand up? How do we take care of those around us? How do we understand the process? This is the challenge, and I think reading Leaves of Grass can help us to prepare for that moment. At 2b, I love how these short poems are placed right here to be read, I think intentionally in a cluster. I think Whitman would say, you're right to pick out these 4 poems and read them all together in one reading together, because it is a Thanatopsis, a musing on the passage of death and dying. Of course, at 3a, we can think of Tennyson's 1842 Ulysses. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. We're all rowing together, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. This idea to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. I think there's a lot of that, no question, in what we're reading. But I want to argue, and I've saved this until now for us, that William Cullen Bryant's Thanatopsis is really the poem, his 1817 offering. And I just want to finish our comments here with this one, as we now enjoy Thanatopsis. And now that you have read so much of Leaves of Grass with me, Pick out all of the echoes that you are hearing. This poem had a tremendous influence, I think, along with Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. This poem had a tremendous influence on Whitman. Thanatopsis. To him who in the love of nature holds communion with her visible forms, she speaks a various language. For his gayer hours, she has a voice of gladness and a smile and eloquence of beauty, and she glides into his darker musings with a mild and healing sympathy. She steals away their sharpness Aries aware. When thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit, and sad images of the stern agony and shrouded pall and breathless darkness, and the narrow house make thee to shudder and grow sick at heart, go forth under the open sky and list to nature's teachings, while from all around, earth and her waters and the depths of air, comes a still voice. Yet a few days, and thee, the all-beholding sun, shall see no more in all his course, nor yet in the cold ground where thy pale form was laid with many tears, nor in the embrace of ocean shall exist thy image. Earth, that nourished thee, shall claim thy growth, to be resolved to earth again, and lost each human trace, surrendering up thine individual being. Thou shalt go to mix forever with the elements, to be a brother to the insensible rock, and to the sluggish clod, which the rude swain turns with his share, and treads upon. The oak shall send his roots abroad, and pierce thy mold. Yet not to thine eternal resting place shalt thou retire alone, nor couldst thou wish couch more magnificent. Thou shalt lie down with patriarchs of the infant world, with kings the powerful of the earth, the wise, the good, fair forms, the hoary seers of ages past, all in one mighty sepulchre. The hills rock-ribbed and ancient as the sun, the vales stretching in pensive quietness between, the venerable woods, rivers that move in majesty, and the complaining brooks that make the meadows green. And poured round all, old oceans gray and melancholy wastes, are but the solemn decorations all of the great tomb of man. The golden sun, the planets, all the infinite host of heaven, are shining on the sad abodes of death through the still lapse of ages. All that tread the globe are but a handful to the tribes that slumber in its bosom. Take the wings of morning, pierce the braken wilderness, or lose thyself in the continuous woods, where rolls the organ and hears no sound save his own dashings. Yet the dead are there, and millions in those solitudes, since first the flight of years began, have laid them down in their last sleep. The dead reign there alone. So shalt thou rest. And what if thou withdraw in silence from the living, and no friend take note of thy departure? All that breathe shall share thy destiny. The gay will laugh when thou art gone. The solemn brood of care plod on, and each one, as before, will chase his favorite phantom. Yet all these shall leave their mirth and their employments, and shall come and make their bed with thee, as the long train of ages glides away. The sons of men, the youth in life's green spring, and he who goes in the full strength of years, matron and maid, the speechless babe and the gray-headed man, shall one by one be gathered to thy side by those who in their turn shall follow them. So live, that when thy summons comes to join the innumerable caravan, which moves to that mysterious realm, where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death, thou go not like some quarry slave at night scourged to his dungeon, but sustained and soothed by an unfaltering trust. Approach thy grave like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. Now, I think if you go back and do a really close study of that set of lines, you cannot help but be blown away at how much Leaves of Grass is born from this poem, this musing, this Thanatopsis musing on death. Finally, at 3b, how are we going to own these four little poems that we have treated as a cluster? Well, I'm ready now to ask you, how are you accepting, how are you living with the fact that you have to go to the van? Are you able to allow yourself to begin the consideration of moving from the known to the unknown, capital you. And to what degree is your study, reading of Leaves of Grass helping that preparation? I hope that that's the case. Thank you.